What if every Black child woke up tomorrow with access to a framework that could heal 7 layers of their wounded self before they ever stepped into an exam room, a courtroom, or a crisis room? What if that framework already exists? Here's what I know. Right now, Black children are being educated against themselves. They walk into classrooms full of potential and walk out having been quietly told their brilliance has a ceiling. But what if a child learned that their thoughts are sacred technology? That what they believe about themselves determines the circumference of their entire life? When you decolonize the mental layer, a child stops shrinking their dreams before they speak them aloud. They stop saying people like us don't do that. They start saying, watch me. What if that same child learned to love their body not as something to be policed, but as a living archive of ancestral memory? Our children carry trauma in their nervous systems that was never theirs to carry. When you decolonize the physical layer, they learn to listen to their body as a spiritual compass. They breathe, they move, they heal not just the wounds of childhood, but the wounds of centuries. We told Black children to be strong, and in doing so, we taught them their tears were weakness and their rage was danger. But what if a child learned that their emotions are divine signals, not disorders, but data? When you decolonize the emotional layer, a child gains emotional sovereignty. They feel fully, they heal fully. What if a child was taught they are spirit first, not a test score, not a diagnosis, spirit first? When you decolonize the spiritual layer, a child reconnects to the inner flame no system could ever fully extinguish. Their divine destiny is not an accident. It is a mission. What if a child became the one who breaks the cycle? Generational trauma is not a life sentence. It is a pattern, and patterns can be interrupted. When you decolonize the karmic layer, a child becomes the pivot point of their entire lineage, the one the ancestors were waiting for. And what if a child knew where they really came from? Of kingdoms, of science, of rhythm, of resistance. When you decolonize the cultural layer, their identity becomes unshakable. They walk into the future as warrior scholars building not just for themselves, but for generations not yet born. That is the promise of Umoja Rising, decolonizing the 7 layers of self. This is not just a book, it is a resurrection. Their roots are not complicated, their roots are power. Link in bio. Let's rise.